God says, "My beloved soul, if you are hearing this right now, understand that this moment was not created for many, it was created for one, and that one is you. Because some messages are never meant to be shared loudly or consumed casually. They are meant to land softly in the exact heart that is ready to recognize them. And if you found this, it is because your awareness has already been shifting long before these words ever reached you, and you knew, even without proof, that something within you was changing." My beloved soul, this video will not remain public for long, not because it is secret, but because it is sacred, and sacred things are rarely meant to be touched by crowds. They are meant to be felt privately, where truth can breathe without distortion. You have been moving differently lately, choosing silence instead of explanations, choosing space instead of emotional bargaining, choosing peace instead of repeating yourself to people who were never truly listening, and while no one may have announced that they noticed, it was noticed deeply. My beloved soul, there is someone who felt the shift the moment you stopped overextending, the moment your energy pulled back into alignment, the moment you decided that self-respect mattered more than being understood, and that realization did not arrive as drama. It arrived as stillness, as an internal pause that forced reflection. You did not raise your voice, you did not demand accountability, you did not threaten distance, you simply became consistent with yourself, and that consistency disrupted patterns that depended on your emotional availability. My beloved soul, when you stopped reaching out, someone else started reaching inward. When you stopped filling the silence, someone else started hearing their own thoughts. When you stopped explaining your value, someone else began questioning why they assumed it would always be accessible. This is not punishment, this is consequence, and consequence is not cruel, it is clarifying. You never disappeared to make someone suffer, you stepped back to protect your nervous system, to preserve your dignity, to stop leaking energy into spaces that could not hold it with care. My beloved soul, your absence did not feel like rejection to them, it felt like loss of grounding, like the removal of something stable they did not realize they relied on, and that realization takes time to settle because it requires honesty. You may not hear from them, you may not see action yet, but you can feel the internal shift because energy always moves before behavior does. There are moments when you cross their mind not as longing, but as respect, not as fantasy, but as truth, and those moments are heavy because they carry responsibility. My beloved soul, you did not beg to be chosen, and that is exactly why you are now being reconsidered with seriousness rather than convenience. Patience has refined you, not diminished you. Waiting did not make you weak, it made you clear. You learned how to sit with yourself without external validation, and that self-containment became your quiet authority. Someone is processing you not as an option, but as a realization, as a standard they now understand they may not have met. They are recognizing that your silence was never emptiness, it was depth, that your calm was never disinterest, it was regulation, and that your distance was never punishment, it was alignment. My beloved soul, you did not block, you did not lash out, you did not burn bridges, you simply stopped crossing yourself to keep others comfortable, and that maturity is rare. This phase you are in is subtle, internal, almost invisible to the outside world, but it is real, and it is powerful. You are not meant to act right now, you are meant to observe. Your role was never to convince anyone of your worth, it was to remain aligned with it. What belongs to you will approach with awareness, not confusion, with responsibility, not excuses. You are being Thought about in moments of honesty, when distractions fall away and truth rises, when someone is alone with themselves and cannot avoid what your presence once represented. Your restraint taught someone more than confrontation ever could. My beloved soul, do not doubt what you feel, because intuition does not shout, it confirms quietly, and what you are sensing is not imagination, it is energetic feedback responding to your growth. The connection you feel is not built on fantasy, it is shaped by reflection. You honored your boundaries without bitterness, and that shifted the emotional dynamic in a way words never could. Someone is learning what it feels like to lose access to someone who carried themselves with grace, consistency, and emotional maturity. You did not leave loudly, and that silence echoed longer than noise ever would. My beloved soul, this message is not here to rush you or promise outcomes. It is here to steady you, to remind you that you are not waiting, you are becoming, that you are not being tested, you are being witnessed. The way you chose self-respect over reaction created a space where truth could finally surface. Let that unfold naturally. You are not required to reach back, explain again, soften your standards, or reopen doors prematurely. Remain exactly as you are, present, grounded, and self-aware, because the version of you that exists now does not need to chase what is meant to meet you. My beloved soul, the reason this message feels personal is because it is personal. It found you because you were ready to hear it, and it will leave when it has done its work. Trust the process that honors your dignity, trust the silence that protects your peace, and trust yourself above all else. This video was meant for you, and only you, because some confirmations are not public announcements, they are private recognitions, and some souls know truth the moment it is spoken. My beloved soul, as this message continues, I want you to remain anchored in the calm that brought you here, because this phase of your journey is not about movement on the surface, it is about deep internal rearrangement, the kind that happens quietly when truth can no longer be ignored. You have reached a level of self-awareness where you no longer need immediate reassurance to feel secure, and that inner stability has altered the emotional atmosphere around you in ways you may not fully see yet, but you can certainly feel. My beloved soul, when you chose stillness instead of reacting, you unknowingly invited someone else into self-reflection, and reflection is uncomfortable for those who are used to distraction. They are replaying moments now, not to romanticize the past, but to understand it, to recognize where they were present and where they were absent, where they assumed and where they failed to notice. Your absence did not create panic, it created clarity, and clarity is far more powerful because it stays. They are beginning to understand that your presence was not loud or consuming, it was stabilizing, grounding, and emotionally regulating. And that kind of presence is often taken for granted until it is no longer available. My beloved soul, you did not argue for your value, and that is precisely why it is now being measured honestly instead of emotionally. This is how mature realization unfolds, not through dramatic apologies or sudden confessions, but through slow, heavy awareness that settles into the body and changes perspective permanently. You may sense a subtle pull, not calling you to move toward them, but asking you to remain exactly where you are, grounded, composed, and aligned, because your steadiness is what allows truth to rise without pressure. Someone is learning the difference between attention and presence, between convenience and commitment, between emotional stimulation and emotional safety, and these lessons are not learned quickly because they require internal responsibility. My beloved soul, your restraint created a pause in their habitual patterns, and in that pause, self-awareness is taking shape. You did not withdraw to manipulate or provoke longing, you withdrew to heal and protect yourself, and authenticity like that is always felt even when it is not acknowledged. There are moments when your name crosses their mind unexpectedly, not attached to desire or nostalgia, but to respect, to a quiet recognition of what you offered without ever demanding credit. They are realizing that you gave something rare, emotional safety without control, care without possession, closeness without self-abandonment, and once that is recognized, it cannot be unseen. My beloved soul, this realization cannot be rushed because it requires real change, not surface behavior, and real change takes time to integrate. Understand this clearly, the depth of your impact is directly connected to the calm with which you stepped back. You did not collapse when uncertainty appeared. You did not chase clarity from someone who was confused. You did not compromise your boundaries to maintain access, and that choice redefined the connection entirely. Someone is now facing their own emotional patterns because you refused to carry emotional weight that was never yours, and this confrontation with self is necessary for growth. This is not distance. This is maturation in progress. You may notice that communication, whether energetic or physical, feels slower, quieter, more deliberate, and that is because impulsiveness is being replaced by consideration. My beloved soul, this phase is not about outcomes, it is about alignment, and alignment always precedes truth. Whether paths converge again or move apart permanently, the respect that is forming now will not disappear, because it is rooted in awareness, not emotion. You are no longer being perceived through fantasy or projection, but through reality, and reality carries weight. Your consistency has made it impossible to dismiss you as temporary, and your boundaries have redefined the terms of access to you. My beloved soul, this is why patience feels different now. It no longer feels heavy or draining. It feels grounded and self-directed. You are not waiting for someone to choose you. You are allowing space for them to recognize what you already know about yourself, and that distinction changes everything. You are sensing movement not because something dramatic is happening externally, but because something is settling internally, both within you and within another soul. My beloved soul, trust this stage even though it is quiet, because quiet is where real decisions are made. Loud emotions fade, impulsive desires shift, but silent realizations integrate into identity. You are not meant to interrupt this process with doubt, fear, or second-guessing. Your only responsibility is to remain honest with yourself, to stay engaged in your own life, to continue honoring your boundaries without resentment or emotional withdrawal. Someone is learning that access to you is not automatic. It is a privilege that requires emotional maturity, consistency, and self-awareness, and that lesson cannot be learned through words alone. My beloved soul, the reason this feels intimate is because it is happening beyond the mind, beyond language, at the level of energy and truth. You are being held in thought not as a memory to revisit, but as a standard that now exists within someone else's awareness. Let that speak for itself. You do not need to lean forward or pull away. You do not need to test or confirm. You simply need to stay rooted in who you have become. What unfolds from here will be shaped by awareness rather than impulse, by responsibility rather than desire, and that is the only foundation strong enough to hold something real. My beloved soul, as this message moves deeper, it is important that you listen without urgency, because nothing here is asking you to act, decide, or move before you are ready. This phase is not about doing more, it is about fully embodying what you have already learned through silence, restraint, and self-honesty. You have reached a point where uncertainty no longer destabilizes you the way it once did, and that is not because you suddenly have answers, but because you learned how to trust yourself even when answers were missing. My beloved soul, you did not become colder, you became clearer, and clarity often looks like distance to those who were accustomed to your emotional availability. You softened your reactions instead of hardening your heart, and that choice changed everything. You remained open without remaining exposed, kind without being consumable, present without being overextended, and that balance reshaped the energetic field between you and others. Someone is now confronting emotional limits they never had to face before because you previously carried more than your share of the connection. When you stopped absorbing confusion, when you stopped stabilizing what was unstable, when you stopped translating emotions that were not being communicated honestly, you created space for truth to surface. My beloved soul, your influence feels strong now even in silence because it is rooted in integrity. You chose consistency over convenience, self-alignment over emotional bargaining, and that choice altered how you are remembered, how you are processed, and how you are felt. You are no longer associated with reaction or emotional intensity, but with reflection and grounded presence. Someone is now asking themselves questions they avoided for a long time, not because you confronted them, but because your calm made avoidance impossible. This is not punishment. This is awakening, and awakening is rarely comfortable. My beloved soul, when you stopped over-explaining, over-giving, over-accommodating, you unknowingly created a vacuum where illusions could no longer survive. In that space, reality became unavoidable. Someone is now seeing clearly what they once took lightly, and clarity can feel heavy when responsibility comes with it. You are not being chased, and you are not chasing, because this connection has moved beyond ego-driven behavior and entered the realm of awareness. My beloved soul, you may experience moments of stillness that feel almost suspended, as if time has slowed and nothing is happening, but this is not stagnation, this is integration. Both you and another soul are integrating lessons, recalibrating values, redefining what connection actually means beyond attachment, fantasy, or emotional dependency. You are learning that peace is not boring, it is safe, and they are learning that safety requires emotional responsibility, consistency, and presence. This is why nothing feels rushed, forced, or dramatic. My beloved soul, you are no longer available for half-presence, mixed signals, or emotionally inconsistent behavior, and that boundary spoke louder than any demand ever could. Someone is realizing that access to you requires more than intention, it requires embodiment. They are becoming aware of how your absence revealed their patterns, how your silence highlighted their avoidance, how your steadiness exposed their inconsistency. These realizations cannot be undone once they land. My beloved soul, this stage is where outcomes are decided internally before they ever appear externally. Whatever direction this connection takes will be shaped by truth rather than hope. You are no longer imagining what could be, you are grounded in what is. And that grounding has anchored your self-worth so deeply that fear of loss no longer controls you. You now understand that what is meant to stay will meet you at your level, not ask you to shrink, explain, or wait indefinitely. My beloved soul, your energy has become selective rather than closed, discerning rather than distant, and that maturity has refined your intuition. You can now sense authenticity without needing constant confirmation. Someone is learning that your kindness was never weakness and your patience was never passivity. They are recognizing that you were strong enough to step back without resentment, to choose peace without punishment, and to walk away without anger, and that kind of strength is unforgettable. My beloved soul, this message exists to remind you that nothing in this journey has been wasted. Every pause, every moment of restraint, every time you chose silence over reaction, built the foundation you are standing on now. You are no longer waiting to be validated, you are aligned with yourself, and alignment always attracts clarity, whether that clarity arrives through reunion or release. Both outcomes honor your growth equally. My beloved soul, remain present, remain honest, remain grounded. You do not need to prepare for what comes next, because you have already been prepared by the way you live through uncertainty with grace. What approaches you next will meet you where you are now, not where you used to be, and that alone is proof of how far you have come. My beloved soul, this final part is not an ending in the way the mind usually understands endings. It is a settling, a grounding, a quiet confirmation of everything you have already integrated within yourself through patience, restraint, and deep self-honesty, because you are no longer standing in uncertainty, you are standing in awareness. And awareness does not rush, demand, or cling. You have reached a stage where silence no longer feels like something missing. It feels like something intact, something whole, something intentional, and that is how you know you are no longer operating from fear of loss but from trust in self. My beloved soul, you are no longer scanning for signs or interpreting every pause as a message, because you have become steady enough to let life reveal itself without force. This is not emotional detachment, this is emotional maturity. You have learned the difference between staying open and staying available to confusion, and you chose openness with boundaries. You are present without being porous, kind without being self-abandoning, receptive without being desperate, and that balance is the result of deep inner work that few people ever complete. Someone else may still be catching up to lessons you have already embodied, and that timing difference no longer destabilizes you. You understand now that growth cannot be synchronized on demand, and you are no longer responsible for slowing yourself down to match someone else's readiness. My beloved soul, the strength you carry now is quiet but unwavering. It does not announce itself. It does not seek approval. It does not need reassurance. It lives in your nervous system, in the way you no longer react impulsively, in the way your body no longer tightens at uncertainty, in the way your heart remains open without being exposed. You do not need to protect yourself with walls because your boundaries are internal and solid. You can sense misalignment without having to justify it, and alignment without having to question it. That clarity is not accidental, it is earned through moments when you chose yourself even when it felt lonely. My beloved soul, this is why confusion no longer has power over you. Mixed signals no longer invite overthinking. Inconsistency no longer triggers self-doubt. What feels unclear simply does not gain access to your emotional space anymore. You are not trying to control outcomes because you are no longer afraid of them. Whether someone steps forward with truth, accountability, and emotional presence, or remains where they are still processing, you remain whole either way. You have released the need to be chosen because you chose yourself without resentment, without closing your heart, without turning bitter. That choice rewired your self-trust at a foundational level. You now understand that connection is not proven through intensity, longing, or constant contact, but through consistency, responsibility, and emotional availability over time. You are no longer impressed by potential that is not embodied. You are aligned with reality, and reality feels calm, not chaotic. My beloved soul, this message is not here to stir longing or create anticipation. It is here to anchor you in the truth of who you are now. You do not need to revisit the past searching for closure, because closure arrived the moment you stopped abandoning yourself. You do not need to rehearse future conversations or imagine explanations, because what is real will not require you to perform or persuade. Everything that needed to be felt has already moved through you. Everything that needed to be learned has already been integrated. You are standing in a calm certainty that does not need to be defended or explained. If someone meets you here, they will meet you with clarity, respect, and emotional responsibility, because anything less simply will not resonate. If they do not meet you here, you will not interpret that as rejection or failure. You understand now that alignment sometimes looks like separation, and separation can still hold meaning without carrying pain. My beloved soul, the most important truth to anchor into your body is this: you did not change yourself to be loved, you stabilized yourself to be honest. You did not become distant, you became self-connected. You did not close your heart, you stopped leaking your energy. That honesty with yourself is your foundation now. You no longer negotiate your worth to maintain connection. You no longer silence your intuition to avoid discomfort. You no longer abandon your needs to keep peace. You remain open, but you are no longer available to confusion, inconsistency, or emotional immaturity. That balance is rare, and it is powerful. This message concludes not because something is ending, but because you no longer need reassurance to continue. You are not waiting for life to begin. You are already living from alignment. Whatever approaches you next will do so with awareness, because awareness is the only thing your energy responds to now. Stay present. Stay embodied. Stay grounded. Trust the version of yourself that was forged in silence. My beloved soul, this message was meant for you, and now it has fulfilled its purpose.